85 million cars sold across every continent every year. Ford, Chevrolet, Volkswagen, Honda, Toyota, Subaru, the brands on every road on the planet. Most buyers choose by advertisement. Mechanics choose by what comes through the lift, what they see fail, what they see last, what they put their own families inside. 3 brands, consistent, for decades. Here is the data. A transmission built jointly by 2 of the largest automakers on the planet started failing within the first 30,000 miles in some vehicles. Ford. Ford introduced the 10-speed 10R80 automatic transmission in model year 2017 across the F-150, Mustang, Expedition, Ranger, and Lincoln Navigator. This was the flagship powertrain announcement of that model cycle. By 2019, more than 60 complaints had been filed with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, describing harsh shifting, lurching, delayed acceleration, and sudden uncontrolled forward surges. Ford issued technical service bulletins, documents that go to dealers, not owners. The owner finds out about a technical service bulletin the same way they find out about most things Ford documents internally, when the car is already broken and sitting on a lift. Internal documents uncovered during litigation showed Ford was aware of the defect before vehicles left the factory and chose to continue selling them anyway. Class action lawsuits were filed in Illinois, Massachusetts, and Virginia. The Illinois case was first filed in 2019. Class certification was still pending in 2026, 7 years. The transmission is still in production. That is one powertrain on one platform. A separate class action covering Ford Focus and Fiesta vehicles equipped with the PowerShift dual-clutch transmission reached a $77 million settlement. That transmission's clutch packs overheated and failed in a documented pattern. Ford's internal data confirmed awareness of the failure rate. The defect caused vehicles to stall in traffic, to shudder, to slip into neutral without driver input. Ford received a $10 million fine in Australia specifically for what that court described as unconscionable conduct and how it handled consumer complaints about this transmission. The United States Department of Justice subsequently opened a fraud investigation into Ford's conduct. Ford never publicly acknowledged that a defect existed in the PowerShift system while it was still in production. Ford also sold millions of vehicles between 2007 and 2020 equipped with the Cyclone V6 engine containing an internal water pump engineered to fail without warning. When the pump fails, coolant enters the oil. The engine can be destroyed in under 60 seconds from the moment of failure to the moment it seizes. Repair cost for an engine replacement on an affected Ford Escape or Explorer runs between $4,000 and $10,000. A class action was filed. Ford's position in litigation was that failures were within acceptable manufacturing tolerance. The owner's position was that they paid between $28,000 and $58,000 for a vehicle Ford knew contained a component with a documented premature failure rate. Before a mechanic buys a car, they run one calculation, not the sticker price, not the finance rate, the total cost of ownership at 200,000 miles. The math on a Ford 10R80 transmission replacement runs between $3,500 and $8,000 in labor and parts. The math on a Cyclone engine replacement runs between $4,000 and $10,000. The math on a PowerShift clutch replacement runs between $1,000 and $3,000 and sometimes fails again within 20,000 miles. Every mechanic in every shop in São Paulo, in Warsaw, in Lagos, and Los Angeles knows this math. It is not hypothetical. It is their weekly revenue. That is why the parking lots behind service bays do not fill up with F-150s and Focuses. They fill up with something else. We will get there. General Motors knew its CP4 high-pressure fuel pump was incompatible with American diesel fuel formulations before it installed the pump in the Chevrolet Silverado, 2500 HD, and other diesel trucks, starting in model year 2011. The CP4 pump was engineered in Europe for European ultra-low sulfur diesel, which provides significantly higher lubricity than the American equivalent. In American fuel, the pump's internal metal components make direct metal-on-metal contact. That contact generates fine metal debris that travels through the entire fuel system. High-pressure injectors, fuel rails, return lines, contaminating and destroying everything downstream. A single CP4 pump failure produces repair bills between $8,000 and $20,000, depending on how far the debris traveled before the driver noticed something was wrong. General Motors installed this pump in American trucks for 5 years. On May 6, 2025, a federal judge granted final approval of a $50 million settlement. $30 million was allocated specifically for truck owners who had already paid out of pocket for pump replacements. $5 million was allocated for overpayment compensation for owners whose trucks never failed, but who purchased a vehicle containing a known defect they were never told about. GM did not admit wrongdoing. Thousands of trucks had already been destroyed before the first lawsuit was filed. The same year GM was finalizing that settlement, a separate jury handed General Motors a $100 million verdict in an unrelated engine defect class action. $150 million in settlements and verdicts in a single calendar year across 2 separate vehicle lines, for 2 separate mechanical failures that the company had internal awareness of before owners experienced them. The mechanic sees both of those vehicles come through the door. They see the repair order. They know what it cost to fix and who paid for it. The vehicle on the lift with the most labor hours billed, the most replacement parts ordered, the most repeat visits in a single year. It is not exotic, it is not luxury, it is not new. It is almost always domestic. The shop owner who runs the numbers at the end of the year knows exactly which brands generate their income. They built their business on it, and then they go home and they do not drive it. If you have found this kind of documented industry truth useful, subscribe and drop your country in the comments. This script draws on Consumer Reports, reliability survey data, and federal court settlement records. Now back to the list. 3 brands appear on every mechanic's personal purchase list across North America, South America, and Europe. Not because of advertising, not because of brand loyalty, but because the failure data says the same thing in every language. Toyota has sold more vehicles globally than any other automaker for 5 consecutive years. 10.8 million units in 2024 alone, across more than 190 countries, making it the number 1 automaker on Earth by volume for the 5th year running. That scale is not the reason mechanics trust it. The reason is a single number, 17%. 17% of all Toyota vehicles ever sold in America are documented as still on the road at 250,000 miles. No other mainstream manufacturer has a single model that reaches that percentage. Toyota has 5. The 4Runner, Tacoma, Tundra, Sequoia, and Land Cruiser occupy every position in IAC Car's longest-lasting vehicle study. The Camry averages 200 to 300,000 miles, documented across verified Consumer Reports owner survey data. The Corolla has confirmed owner reports of 400,000 miles on original powertrains. Not manufacturer claims, real-world odometer readings shared in public forums and documented by automotive journalists. The specific engineering reason is not a marketing claim. Toyota's internal development policy, known publicly as incremental improvement, prohibits replacing a validated platform with an entirely new architecture until the replacement system has been tested and confirmed across multiple vehicle generations. That is why the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine in the Camry remained fundamentally stable in architecture across years of external redesign, while competitors introduced turbocharged direct injection units that developed intake valve carbon deposits, oil consumption problems, and intercooler condensation issues within 40,000 to 60,000 miles. Simplicity maintained under competitive pressure is not conservatism. It is a documented engineering decision that produces a specific outcome. Consumer Reports rated Toyota the most reliable brand globally in its 2026 survey with a score of 66 out of 100. Subaru scored 63, Honda scored 59, Chevrolet scored 42, Ford scored 44, Jeep scored 28, Ram scored 26. Those are not opinions. Those are survey responses from over 380,000 vehicle owners weighted by severity of reported problems across up to 20 trouble categories per vehicle. The mechanic who services Toyotas for a living generates less revenue per vehicle than the mechanic who services domestic trucks. Lower repair frequency means lower billable hours. They know this. They buy Toyotas anyway. That is the clearest signal in the data. There is an engine in production since 2002 that independent mechanics describe as nearly indestructible. The documentation of its longevity did not come from Honda's engineering team. It came from forum users, shop owners, and independent technicians who started noticing they almost never saw this engine fail in any fundamental way. Honda. The Honda K-Series 4-cylinder engine, introduced in 2002 and used across the Civic Si, Accord, CR-V, Element, and Acura TSX, uses a timing chain instead of a timing belt. This is a specific engineering decision with a specific financial consequence that compounds over every 100,000 miles of ownership. A timing belt on an interference engine requires replacement every 80,000 to 100,000 miles. Parts and labor on a timing belt service run between $500 and $1,200 per service depending on the market and the shop. The timing chain. Honda specified on the K-Series is designed to last the life of the engine. Honda's own service documentation states the inspection threshold is not a mileage interval. It is a physical measurement of chain elongation taken at 300,000 kilometers. The service department lost a scheduled maintenance revenue event that competitors had been collecting from customers every 6 to 8 years. The owner kept between $1,500 and $3,600 across a 300,000-mile ownership period. That is the compounding arithmetic of one engineering decision made in favor of the owner. The K-Series engine block uses die-cast aluminum with cast iron cylinder sleeves. Cast iron cylinder sleeves handle thermal expansion and abrasion better than the all-aluminum alternatives that competing manufacturers moved to in pursuit of weight reduction targets. The all-aluminum block saves approximately 15 pounds. The cast iron sleeve approach costs the manufacturer slightly more per unit to produce. The consequence for the owner is an engine that shows documentably less cylinder wall wear at 200,000 miles than comparable all-aluminum units. The aftermarket parts ecosystem for the K-Series is so extensive that a full engine rebuild at 300,000 miles costs less than a single transmission replacement on a domestic competitor platform. That is what happens when an engine is simple, proven over 2 decades, and supported by a global parts network that spans every continent where Honda sells cars, which is 170 countries. Consumer Reports placed Honda first overall in its combined brand ranking for 2026, scoring 76 on the index that incorporates road test performance, reliability, owner satisfaction, and safety simultaneously, the highest score of any brand on the list. The Passport and Pilot scored above average on predicted reliability. The CR-V and Civic scored average. No Honda model scored below average on predicted reliability in the survey. Not one. Brand-level consistency that no domestic American manufacturer has achieved in more than 20 years of Consumer Reports data. The third brand on every mechanic's personal list was not always there. It earned its position through one specific engineering decision made 52 years ago and refined every year since: Subaru. Consumer Reports named Subaru the most reliable car brand in the world in its 2025 survey. First place, ahead of Lexus, Toyota, and Honda. The brand that earned that position sells approximately 1 million vehicles per year globally, roughly 1/10 of Toyota's volume. It does not lead the reliability rankings because of scale. It leads because of architecture. Every Subaru sold on every continent, in Brazil, in Germany, in Poland, in Japan, uses the same longitudinally mounted, horizontally opposed Boxer engine, feeding a permanently engaged symmetrical all-wheel drive drivetrain. The Boxer engine places the pistons horizontally opposing each other rather than vertically. The engine sits lower in the chassis than any competing inline-4 or V configuration engine in the same vehicle segment. Lower center of gravity reduces the mechanical load on drive shaft universal joints, CV joints, and transmission output bearings during cornering and load transfer. Lower stress per component means longer component service life. This is not a claimed benefit, it is a consequence of geometry. Every mechanic who has replaced the drivetrain components on a comparable crossover and then opened the hood of a Subaru for the first time understands immediately what the geometry difference means in practice. Subaru introduced the symmetrical all-wheel drive system in 1972. The company has been refining the same fundamental architecture for 52 years without abandoning the platform for a ground-up replacement. The Outback launched in 1994. The current generation Outback uses the same longitudinal Boxer layout with the same symmetrical drivetrain geometry. The mechanic who learned the platform in 2005 can diagnose and repair a 2025 model with the same tools and the same knowledge. That serviceability compounds across the global network of independent shops that stock Subaru-specific parts and build Subaru-specific expertise over decades of working on the same fundamental system. Consumer Reports' reliability score for Subaru in 2025 was 63. Ford's score was 44, Jeep's score was 28, Ram's score was 26. Those scores are derived from 380,000 owner surveys weighted by the severity of problems reported across 20 trouble categories per vehicle. A gap of 37 points between Subaru and Ram is not a margin of difference. It is a description of two different kinds of vehicle. One generates significant annual repair costs for its owner, the other does not. The mechanic sees both every week. They chose one for their family. Every shop on every continent keeps the same unofficial inventory. The vehicles that come back most often, the labor hours that are highest per vehicle per year, the warranty disputes that consume the most service time, those patterns are consistent globally. São Paulo sees the same data as Warsaw. Lagos sees the same data as Los Angeles. The brands that fill service bays with high revenue repeat failures are documented. The settlements are public record. The technical service bulletins are filed with federal regulators. The Consumer Reports surveys cover 380,000 owner responses. None of this information is hidden. All of it is accessible to anyone who looks. The argument against buying a domestic American vehicle is not nationalism in reverse. It is not cultural preference. It is a maintenance log. It is a federal court docket. It is a Consumer Reports survey table covering 380,000 vehicles across 26 brands. The mechanic does not hold a grudge. They hold a repair order. A repair order from a vehicle that returned 4 times in 18 months for the same transmission symptom that the technical service bulletin addressed but did not fix. A repair order that the owner paid for twice before the brand acknowledged the problem. That repair order is the argument. The mechanic files it, prints it, hands it to the customer, and then goes home in a car that does not produce one. Toyota, Honda, Subaru, 3 brands. The same three brands' mechanics have parked in their own driveways for 30 years, while the brands they service most frequently sit in the bays behind them, generating income. The advertising budgets of the brands not on this list are measured in billions annually. The repair bills their customers generate are also measured in billions annually. Those two numbers are not unrelated. One last figure. The Toyota 4Runner has a 26% documented probability of reaching 250,000 miles, confirmed by IC Cars analysis of over 300 million vehicle registration records. The Ford Explorer's comparable figure is 4.1%. That gap is not explained by maintenance habits. It is explained by engineering decisions made before the vehicle left the factory, by material specifications chosen during development, and by the corporate culture that decided those specifications were worth the manufacturing cost. The mechanic did not choose the car with a better commercial. They chose the car with a better number. The number was always there. It was just never in the advertisement.